Hello and welcome to the Riverside Times. Today, for our issue talk, we'll be discussing the issue of racism.
So, let's start with a bit of history. Racism can be traced back to the 14th century in the Middle East and North Africa. Prejudice developed among Arabs because of their things like the slave trade, the influence of Aristotelian ideas regarding slavery, and the influence of Judeo-Christian ideas regarding humans.
Africans weren't always considered inferior, though. In the 15th and 16th century, when Portuguese sailors first explored Africa, they considered the people to be an inspiration and serious rivals in the terms of advanced cities and inventions. However, over time, African civilization did not advance as quick and as much as European civilization. That meant that European people began taking Africans as slave and laborers.
Racism spread rapidly during the 17th to 19th century.
The first ever racist laws were passed in America in 1790. They restricted citizenship to people with different skin color than white.
Unfortunately, in 1819, Congress passed laws to assimilate Native Americans, which caused rapid spread of racism and oppression to the Native Americans.
But luckily, in 1927, the first African American newspaper appeared. This proves that even though two people were a different race, they could work together hand in hand and produce a product.
In 1830, another law was passed based on racist assumption by the Congress. All Native Americans from the east, from the Mississippi River, were moved to the west. This caused public to believe that racism was the right thing to do.
Many laws after this were unfortunately passed which supported racism. The situation would be that bad that black people would have separate buses than white people. Luckily, racism had partly stopped. There are still some cases of it today, but it is much more less than it used to be.
Now we will go to one of our grand reporters, Barbara Nebeska. She has conducted a survey.
Hello, my name is Barbara Nebeska and I'm one of the ground reporters for Riverside Times. We have decided to interview one teacher and two students for a topic, racism.
I have experienced racial discrimination from some of the other European nations. My view on racism is that it's by all means wrong and that people should never experience it or perform on other people. I think that racism is partially an issue in international schools.
Yes, I've seen racism. They called a person, they judged them by the color of the skin. My view on racism is that I think there should not be racism in the world because it's a bad thing to judge people. I don't think that it's a really big issue in international schools about racism because they usually respect each other and there's not much of a problem. I think that racism is decreasing.
I don't quite know whether it qualifies as racism, but I've seen people wear like the, is it called a swastika? Like the Hitler symbol, and that's not, I don't know if that's racism, but it's definitely prejudice. And on a certain occasion that made me be quite upset. In terms of other people, I've overheard people saying comments that were definitely racist or make racist jokes, but yeah, and I'm quite fiercely against that, so I would usually tell them off or not laugh. My view on racism is that it's a very bad thing. Full stop. I don't think I've seen it as an issue at this school. I don't know many international schools. I could foresee it being an issue if there's maybe like a very like a majority of some people from one country, for example. I think what you sometimes get is more like a culturalism, so that some people might reject a certain culture, because culture is often spread wider than just nations or race, whatever that is, you know. But I think it's also the place where it's least acceptable. Not that it's ever acceptable, but it's least acceptable. I do think that racism is decreasing, but I think that even though racism is decreasing, it kind of other problems take the place of racism, where it's no longer maybe race against race or nation against nation. It's sometimes poor against rich, or it's the intelligence against the what they call the not so intelligent people, that kind of thing. It's people exploiting other people, not because of race, but just because they're more fortunate, or so they think. So I think racism may decrease, but other problems really take its place, and none of them are good.
Hello and welcome back to the newsroom, and thank you, our grand reporter Barbara, for conducting this highly educative survey.
Next on, we have another grand reporter, Victoria, focusing on the current cases of racism.
So today we'll focus on more cases, but our main focus is the Michael Brown case, which happened on August 9, 2014 in Missouri. But Victoria will tell you more.
Hello, my name is Victoria Hampton. I'm another grand reporter from Riverside Times. I would like to talk to you about some current cases of racism. Michael Brown was 18 years old. It occurred on August 9, 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri. Shot by Darren Wilson, a white Ferguson police officer. Shortly before the shooting, Brown robbed a store from where he stole cigarettes and isolated the clerk. Wilson was sent to find other people who robbed the shop. Wilson and his friend Johnson were riding down the street when Wilson backed up his car to the block them because he thought they recognized the robbery suspects. Both suspects tried to escape when Brown stopped and faced Wilson. Without any warning or cause, Wilson fired the gun at Brown several times, which caused immediate death. Brown was unarmed. Another case of racism is the Trayvon Martin case. Trayvon Benjamin Martin was out on the night of February 26th of 2012. He was only 17 years old, African American from Miami, who was fatally shot by George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer, even though the author's list told him not to engage. Zimmerman claims that it was a self-defense, and he started following Trayvon because he looked at a hoodie because of his clothing, which was a hoodie. Zimmerman has other accounts of violent crimes, such as an assault.
So hello, and since we're back in the newsroom again, it is time for us to say goodbye. But before we do so,
I'd like to say a couple words. Racism is a deep and disgusting thing. It's a darkness that fills our world with hate and other things. But you can help prevent it. You see racism, confront it. Don't be afraid.
so we'd like to thank everybody who's watching, and just thank you